Welcome to our live discussion of Painted Devils. Obviously, I am joined by Margaret, the word nerd, a fellow
Hello.
fan.
Hello.
How are you doing, Margaret? How are you doing today?
Emotionally damaged. You've probably had a few more hours to like process the ending of that book than I have, because I finished this at like 10 a.m. while I was walking to pick my car up from the tire place.
Oh yeah, you did not. I finished it last night, I'll say, thanks to, I was hosting Manor Sprints, and I was like, friends, you're going to be with me as I finish this. And I was like, what else am I going to do tonight? Nothing. I can't do anything else because it was so good.
That's funny. I was also reading it last night. I just wasn't reading it on Sprints.
Yeah, you know what's crazy though is I was thinking about this, and I was trying to consider my thoughts about it, because when I first read this, I wasn't using quarter star ratings, and I gave it a 4 when I first read it. And then when I finished it this time, I was like, there's just so much more for me to take from it that I ended up being like, I got to give it a 5. And not everyone has to give it a 5. It's totally fine. But what's interesting is when I was kind of discussing this idea of where to rate it, and we can get into the comparisons at some point where we can kind of compare our feelings about Little Thieves, Painted Devils, because while they're very clearly cohesively part of the same series, they're also very different. Tennille, who I see in the comments, was mentioning this feeling that because Little Thieves was a bit more like action forward, heist, curse, and then we have Painted Devils, which is far more introspective. There's a lot more like emotional healing and those types of things going on. It's kind of interesting to kind of compare the two. And I think that going right from Little Thieves to Painted Devils, I didn't fully like appreciate and understand that change in tone until I reread it. And then I was like, oh, this is really good. So
it's so funny because I'm such a character-driven reader that I don't think I noticed that, just because we're with the same character in the same character's head. So I'm reading a lot, especially a book like this where I feel so connected to the main character. I'm reading it character first, and so I'm not noticing the difference between like internal plot versus external plot, right?
Yeah, for sure. And we also got into the point where this is like arguably a journey narrative, like obviously like emotionally for Vanya, but also physically they are having to travel. And I've kind of discovered that maybe not all journey narratives are for me initially, but then being able to dig into it was great.
I appreciated the way that she did the journey aspect of this too, because I think sometimes where authors fall, like, you know, kind of falter when they're doing is they can get very caught up in the travel part when the travel part is not important, right?
Right.
And so a lot of their travel is summarized versus being like being the main like it's summarized. That's what I mean. Like, so rather than going into every detail, because we don't need every detail, we just need to know that they've gotten from one place to another. So
yeah, and then that one place that they've now arrived at needs to be significant. And the question is like, have you done that seamlessly? But anyways, let's actually stop and say hello to everybody before we start.
I feel like we're just this is gonna be us bouncing around. 5 stars from me as well. Every time. It's just, it got 5 stars the first time. It got 5 stars this time. I don't think I will ever rate it anything less.
No, and okay, hold on. Oh my gosh, I keep wanting to like dig into this, and it's like, okay, let's say hello to everybody. Hello, Abs. Literally just finished the book, talking about leaving it to the last minute. Honestly, I think I know that adds to the stress. I mean, because Kendra also says just finished a half an hour ago. So you know, we're all.
How you doing, Kendra? How you doing?
Yeah, I know. Oh gosh, I hope you're okay, Kendra. Glad it's not just me. Why are we like this? Well, I think it's like we're like, oh well, it's in the distance. We're fine. And then suddenly the distance is actually tomorrow or today. And I'm also always worried that I'm gonna like forget the nitty-gritty details that I'm definitely gonna want to mention. And so I hold off.
So here's part of why I waited so long, because I didn't get home until Thursday. Because I was obviously, Leander knows, I was out of town from last Wednesday until so the Wednesday before last, actually, until Thursday this last week. And I've been listening to it, but I also wanted the physical book handy in case. And I was like, I'm not bringing this number one, I have the Illumicrate edition, and that's the one I'm reading this time around. I'm not bringing that with me places. And number two, I was trying to limit the number of books I was bringing. So I was like, listen, I've got enough days. I can do this. It'll be fine. And so I just listened. I was supposed to finish it last night, but then I was just too tired. Like, I was going to finish it while I was on errands, and we got to a specific point in the plot, and I was like, oh, there are too many feelings going on for me to feel comfortable listening to this in public when people can see my face. I also, oh my God, speaking of, I met one of my librarians in the wild. I turned around and there was this person like waving at me. I was like, oh.
Oh, you don't live in the library? They let you out?
I was like, oh, look at us in our other natural environment. It was very funny. She's very friendly. She's fun. I like her.
Oh, that's great though. Oh. Also, well, then we had some people who were far more, ahead of the game, like Zoe, having read it by Thursday. Great. Wanted to be fresh in my memory. Then I was like, oh, that's in a couple. Exactly. It just kind of like surprises you. That's how I felt, because I love that we start the book early, like with our, read along sprints in the month. So I'm like, okay, I have like a foundation. And then my goal is always to piecemeal it. But in reality, I read like the first 100 pages and then I finish it the week that we're supposed to talk about it.
And here's the thing, I feel like Holy Terrors is going to be fully different. So I'm actually going to have but Holy Terrors, I plan on like immersion reading, actually physically like highlighting and taking notes of things that I want to talk about in a much more detailed way, because a lot of Little Thieves and Painted Devils, I remember, with the exception of like one thing that happens at the end. But like Holy Terrors, this is going to be the first time. So I'm not going to have any previous notes to draw on. Like I have
anticipate. Like you're not going to have scenes that are coming up at some point.
I have my tabbed up version with the different themes that I do. So like I have that. If I want to look something up, I can.
But you won't be able to do it for Holy Terrors yet until you get to reread it, of course, which you will.
Which I might just do.
Like right after, be like, okay, let's start from the beginning.
Who wants to read it again?
Yeah, like, come on, we can do this. A read along, a reread along. That's what we should call it. And then meanwhile, Tennille also timed Libby really well, actually. Like the Libby borrow was due today. That's actually perfect timing because we were going to be talking about it today anyway. Can't believe you have had to wait 2 years for the last book. I'm not happy I have to wait genuinely. It's kind of insane. And especially, what's so interesting about this, and then we can get into actually discussing the book. But I was talking about this with other friends, how depending on the series, and especially nowadays, there is this expectation that like the next book should be out either within the year or even sooner than that. I mean, if we look at like Fourth Wing and like the way that they ended up having the second book, Iron Flame, come, few months after and all these things. And there's a lot of stuff going on in there. But then when we think about this series, and I feel like it makes sense why it takes so long. There's probably so many other elements that go into play with the publisher and with agents and with Margaret Owen herself. But like with this type of intricacy of a story, I'm like, how would you write this in a year? I don't know, and feel fully like ready.
Well, here's the thing: is she probably was able to write it in a year. It's the editing and all the other stuff that
it's all the other stuff. What I mean is like the process. Like, how could you do everything that needs to be done from starting first draft all the way to now it's on the shelves for people to read? I mean,
it's all about time and resources. I think Margaret Owen is an author online that's really good if you want to write. She's a really good person to follow because she's very good. Like it's very clear that she's good at pacing herself. But like Oathbound that just came out, Tracy Dion needed more time to write that book, and so they postponed it. And I really appreciate that they did that, because I think not every author, like some authors are able to turn out the book a year. There are people who are absolutely prolific as writers, but that's not a good expectation to set for everyone. And it didn't used to always be that way, right?
Right.
Especially,
and there's no guarantee that the person is starting the book right when the other book is published. Like they might have been writing it for way longer. It's just that, so there could be this cascade effect where it's not like as soon as the book is published, okay, now I'm going to start the next one. It's like, no, you probably have already been writing that for quite some time.
Most of the authors that I know of and follow their process, they give themselves like a few weeks to a month off, and then they're jumping right into the next one after they turned in edits for like the first, like I know a lot of people that they'll do the rough draft for the book. They'll send it back, they'll get edits for it, and then they'll go into the next one.
Hi, JB. How are you? Just finished it yesterday. Yes. Oh, look at us go. Want to shake Vanya? Yeah, I totally understand. I know. Especially the ending. Oh my gosh, Kendra. I have a 7-week wait for Holy Tears. Oh, I hope it comes in. And hopefully, the people who are ahead of you either know that they won't have time to read it and then they just push it forward for you,
Yeah.
or they binge it. And I would expect that they would be able to do that.
Here's the thing.
Pre-ordered it on Audible.
I know I have Audible credits for it if I don't get it. I've requested it from my Libby, and put it on notify me because I want to, like, I know that helps people gauge who wants books. And I will, if I get it through my Libby, I will. But if I need to, I do have that Audible credit. I'll also probably check Hoopla because if Hoopla has it,
Oh yeah, well, because Hoopla had the other two. That's how I had access to it, to be completely honest. So I mean, there is that. But let's actually discuss Painted Devils. So first and foremost, the opening, right? We have Vanya, and initially she is on a journey to meet Emmerich, right? Like initially that was her goal, was to kind of make her way, and then she changes her mind, as she does, and finds herself neck deep in a cult, basically, due to a drunken night where she just spills all of her rubies, like everything that she got after, the chaos that happened back in, the Empire. And so then she ends up creating this entire scheme, getting people to, of course, collect all the rubies for her. And that's where the Scarlet Maiden comes in. We do have the Red Maid of the River as well. So there is this kind of throwing around of different terms surrounding the same type of being. But yeah, little does Vanya know that she ends up kind of opening a can of worms, and the Scarlet Maiden's like, yes, I am here. Hello. And that just ensues all of the chaos. So what did we think about the opening of this book and the inclusion of Emmerich? Because we really do have a significant amount of time between the end of book 1 and the start of book 2, at least for these two characters. For us, obviously, it hasn't been that long. But then we have them kind of reunite immediately.
I remember, so I had two totally, because this is my reread, I had two totally different experiences reading it the first time versus the second time. Because when I read it the first time, I was like, okay, I am mildly confused as to how we got here and what happened, because she just throws you in media res, which she did in the first book as well. So it makes sense. I do appreciate how we got Emmerich in much more quickly in this one. Like, he's in within the first chapter. But I do remember being like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to go with it. I'm going to figure out what is happening, and like so many things not making sense until later in the book when a certain thing is revealed. And I was like, well, it makes sense that I was confused because Fanya was also confused. So,
but yeah, well, what's interesting is it does open up similarly as far as like just like skeletal plot, where the opening is Vanya in the middle of a scam. Like she's in the middle of a trick.
Per usual.
Yeah, it's like, all right. So it's as unfamiliar as it is. Like, it's kind of like, oh yeah, like here we are. Vanya's just doing her thing.
It's very interesting because we find her in the middle of a scam. In this case, it's a little bit less self-serving than the first one. Because, like, obviously the first thing with the rubies, the first thing with rubies, yeah, that was kind of self-serving, trying to get people to help her do this. And I'm realizing things about the people who came to help her, that they would have seen her and recognized her based on the Margaret Owen. Anyways, but it is like, it's interesting because a part of her stays, it's very clear that part of her stays because this did something for these people, and she feels bad breaking that illusion for them, even though, like, she's a nice cult leader.
Yeah, and like she was trying to find a time to kind of just
separate herself without ending their belief.
Yeah. So it was her kind of being conscientious, saying like, ooh, I have gotten myself into deep water, but not that I'm worried about getting in trouble. I'm more so worried about the impact that I've left behind on this unassuming village community. So I think that also shows the perfect timing and like understanding of the night that she kind of planned to kind of slip away and maybe like have all of this end and have no one really notice. That's the night the Scarlet Maiden officially decides to show herself and like prevents Vanya from being able to kind of like leave quietly. So yeah, it is kind of interesting as far as that and the relationship standards that we start off with her and Emmerich, because I think that we get some turmoil throughout the book as well, of him feeling as though she's fallen back into her old ways and assuming, like, even though he cares deeply for her and knows that she's a good person, he also kind of views her as like falling off the wagon at times. And so, like, even as it was a humorous moment, it's one of a few instances throughout this book where he kind of expects the worst of her. And we start to see it chip away at her.
Honestly, I agree that there are a couple of moments, especially at the very beginning, where that is the case. I think a lot more of those moments where Emmerich is expecting the worst of her are actually her own projection. He is assuming because so much of this is from her, and she's an unreliable narrator, like, kind of thing. So many of the times when we have Emmerich assuming things, she is assuming he's assuming things. I can think of like 2 or 3 actual places where, yes, absolutely. One was where they're meeting each other for lunch. One's at the very beginning when he's like, I don't know what the fuck. I thought we were meeting and now we're not, and so I'm not sure what's going on here.
You know, it's a mixed bag where there are instances where he's at fault, but there are also instances where she's not providing him with the benefit of saying, like, no, I'm actually overreacting or overthinking that everything I do, you'll just assume the worst of me. And I think that just shows that both of them are kind of healing from that and trying to break old habits. Because obviously with Little Thieves, it was far more severe as far as his accusations, immediate assumptions about her as well. And then in book 2, it's not as severe, but it is kind of like they have to reteach themselves not to jump to that like immediate, like, ooh, think before I say something situation. And I think that also shows a healthy relationship where they're both working to be better. Because even with Emmerich, because at one point when they're in the library, for instance, it's an earlier scene.
Oh yeah, I remember that part. Oh yes.
Yeah, he assumes that she is trying to steal this goblet for her own gain because it's this like, ooh, shiny thing. And then when he discovers what her actual intentions were, he apologizes, says, I shouldn't have jumped to that conclusion. And I really like that because it shows that you can make a mistake in a relationship, but you also have to make sure that you're making up for it appropriately by acknowledging the other person.
It really shows that, like, the difference between being, God, I'm going to get into attachment styles, but being raised in a family where you are secure in love and things like that. I think he has a level of ability to step back because he, again, we talked about this in the last book. He knows what happened to Fanya. She didn't have to tell him. She does, but he knows what happened to her. And so when she's like, he knows to be like, okay, I need to approach this. He knows to approach things more carefully in certain areas. So he has that forethought. And I really liked that. The fact that he's like, you know what, you're right, I was wrong. And he's able to take that and learn from it and not continue to perpetuate harm. Right?
Yeah, and you know what? Now that we're getting into it, let me first let's look at some of the comments, and then I have a response.
If we talked about that at the Mexican place, or if we talked about that on a live stream, but we did.
I know, we totally did. Sitting right next to my device when the notification came through. So I'm a second in line for Holy Terrors. Oh my gosh. Good for you, Tennille. Good job. And then also, hi, Ash. Welcome to the party. Wonderful indeed. I know they were apart for a few months, but I was so glad he appeared so quick. Yeah. So like we didn't feel those few months. And I feel like that made sense. And it vocalized to Vanya, she isn't all bad like she thinks. Yes, because she has to like unlearn so much. And I think that with their dynamic of him coming from such a stable background, yes, he does have trauma. He lost his father when he was young, and that led him down his path to become a prefect and everything else. So he hasn't had the quote unquote perfect picket fence life. Yeah. But I think that putting these two characters together and having him be someone who can't fully empathize with everything Vanya has gone through, it adds like a really important dynamic to show that you don't have to have experienced the same level of trauma to try to support that person and be patient with them and work through their triggers as well. Because I think a lot of times, and not necessarily not all books, but a lot of books that have relationships, like they like trauma bond. And I would argue we don't really see that with these
No.
characters, even though they understand that both of them have gone through different trials.
I think there's one specific instance where we see like, yeah, they're like, yeah, our feelings here, the things we have gone through here are the same. The insecurities that both he and Vanya share, I think she has on a higher level because of the way that she was raised. But it's so interesting to see that like he is so capable, and I think it's part of because he does what he does, and because you see the influence of Hubert Clemens, in that he's able to, when Vanya said in the first book, like, I have only ever had bad choices, he's able to recognize so easily that he has had good choice. Like, even when terrible things happened to him, he still had good choices he could make. He still had people to support him and who listened to him. And he is able to recognize it was not the same for Vanya. And I feel like so many people, that is not the experience for people, is when you try to bring that stuff up, people don't recognize that, like what she said, is you've had good choices. You made good choices because you had good choices. You didn't have to. And I love how Margaret Owen is able to balance that in the idea, because that's a theme in this book, is in the idea that sometimes people don't make bad choice. You know, people aren't making bad choices out of maliciousness a lot of the time. They're making bad choices because that is what is available to them and the only way they can see out.
Yeah, and we see that in subtle side characters.
Yes.
There's a flashback to when Vanya's traveling to this village and she notices another young girl who is being like sent away by her mother, their parents. And as soon, like, she basically kind of creates a trap for this young girl to see if she's going to try to steal. Because again, this young girl also didn't have any other options. All she needs to do is try to save herself. And Vanya sends her on her way and helps her. And then you kind of realize that a lot of other young girls or other people in general just don't have the opportunities to make the right choice, the right choices. Because even later on, when we're dealing with the young girl who ended up working at, who was it?
Agneath, I believe, is the name.
Yes, Agneath. Yeah, so she ends up having to work at this, brothel basically to assist, and she isn't literate, so she's swindled. And the reason why she had to like stoop to working in conditions that she knows wasn't going to be to her benefit was because they had no other choice. They were going to lose their home, and there's like all of these situations. And so I think that this book highlights a lot of moments where people just didn't have the opportunity, especially young people. Yeah, for sure.
And it's so historically accurate to how things would have been at the time. But the interesting thing when you bring that up is that not only was like her going to work in this brothel where she's being paid less than she's worth, being made to do like being abused by the proprietress, all of that kind of stuff, she it puts her in a worse position because of the way things are set up. She is then not able to help her sister pay her rent because she was illiterate and got swindled and all of that.
Yeah.
So like it shows the cycle of you make the most available choice to you, and then if that choice doesn't work out, that puts you in a worse position, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I will let everyone know that I think that everyone who's here, most people who are here they have read this book, but we are going to start moving into spoilers because I do want, after I read this next comment from Abs, I want us to talk about Kirkling. As someone who is very much unyielding and refuses to acknowledge someone's past and the fact that they don't have as many opportunities. But also I know some may think it's repetitive that she bounces back and forth on not being good enough, but it makes it more realistic that one reassurance action aren't enough. More is needed to heal. Yes, because it's a lot for her. And a lot of it's because on top of the fact that Vanya has had multiple significant people impact her view of self-worth. Not only her mother, but also we ended up having Irmgard and just her status, with Giselle and Giselle's family. She found, like Death and Fortune, how she found them to abandon her at one point in her view because of everything else. And so she assumes that everyone's going to leave her or treat her badly. Like she even assumes multiple times that Emmerich is going to leave her because why would he want to be with her? So
it's so interesting because it does speak to how trauma is a cycle. And we even see Vanya be able to lift herself to some extent out of that cycle towards the end of like being able to go, no, wait a minute, let's take a step back. She's not like that at the beginning of the book. And there's always like a specific, like, so I think one of the things that authors run into is sometimes you don't see the triggers as well for when people slip back into the spiral. We are able to see the trigger every single time in this book. Like, it's so well done. Why, like, you understand why to some extent. We don't understand the full extent because that doesn't happen until we get to the very end. And once you know the story with her mom and what happened with her mom, the full extent of it, not just the little bit that we get at the beginning of Little Thieves, like, that makes so many things make sense because that's her deepest wound, right? You're muted.
I'm muted. Yes. I fully agree. I was almost going to fight through the voice barrier and be like, but anyway, I completely agree. And really, like, now that we are in the spoiler zone, really what we end up discovering at the end is that the Scarlet Maiden is her mother. Is a ghost who has gained power through, obviously, like, the people believing in her abilities and using her power wisely, and through her anchor that she also had through the lantern. And we also, like, when you discover that, and when we see Vanya discovering it too, the fact, like, it's piecemeal throughout the book, even her recognition of, oh, Marta is my alias. I thought I just chose that name out of nowhere. No, it's the name that was my mother's, and I subconsciously, like, ended up taking that on as an alias, which is wild. And yeah, the fact that this trauma that was instilled, and also her having to unpack that her family didn't all feel the same way as her mother, because she did associate all of her feelings that her mother did to her and everything with, oh, everyone was happy to see me go. All of my siblings were happy to see me go. And then when we actually unpeel that layer and we discover, no, you were just unfortunate that you were the last child, because she blamed all of us in succession, and we were all just too young to really protect you. And that's something that they all regretted. And obviously, what adds to it is when they lost their mother and their youngest sister that night, the person they mourned was Vanya. And that also fueled the fire for
mama. It just, like, this book is why you need to be careful what you say to your kids, the novel, because so much of what drives Vanya is linked to the things her mother told her about herself, because we believe our parents. Right? And one of the things I love about her unpacking is, as she is unpacking that and we see her kind of getting some of the memories, her being able to recognize as an adult, or now that she's older, the ways her siblings tried to care for her and save her. Yeah. And how untrue, like, what her, like, I think we would be looking at a very different story if we did not have that moment when she gets back to the Rose farm and realizes that these people have been sitting and waiting and praying for her to come home. I think we'd be looking at a very different book for Holy Terrors if that initial wound had not had, like, it's not healed yet, but they managed to apply the medicine that she needed to be able to start healing. Right?
Yeah. And because, just to go back to the fact that Vanya just assumes the worst, is that when she discovers that they're her siblings far earlier than anticipated, right? It's kind of, she's shocked to discover this, and it's, thanks to Oscar. Oh God, what a freaking annoying brother. I know, like, really, like, this is clearly, this was not the time, but she ends up discovering this, and then she's thinking, oh, the reason why they didn't, like, they've known I'm, their sister for all this time, and they never told me. It's because they're disappointed in me. It's because they didn't want me, because the moment they discovered I was creating a cult, like, this is the worst timing for all of this. Of course, they didn't want me. And in reality, they end up having this discussion where they're like, you weren't ready for us to know that you were our sister. Like, Helga says, I think is it their sister? Her name might be Ida. Ends up initially saying, you're my sister. And she says, you look like a puppet whose strings have just been cut. Like you clearly were not ready to hear that we were your family. And so it just shows
Can
the
you,
mess of it all.
can you imagine what it was like for, I think, Jakob and I don't remember
Udo?
what, Udo, for them to be like, have this girl walk into town that is the spitting image of their mother, and for them to be like, oh, like, oh yes, oh my god, the way that like, I remember being like, this is important somehow. Okay,
Mhm.
maybe this is tied back to, because like they do talk about the lantern quite a bit in her story about how she was left. So it's like,
Mhm.
okay, so maybe this is going, like, maybe we're using the lantern as like a symbolic thing of her finding the light that she needs or finding her way home. Nope. Nope.
It is the key to everything. Because I did remember that. And
Yeah,
I remember
I
there's
did.
this one moment where like Udo or Jakob is like holding like an old lantern. And I was like, it's her. He's holding her. And then what I did forget was when they took the lantern up to the cave and left it.
Mm-hmm.
I completely forgot about that. And so that's why it was there, which of course is such like a red herring, because the reason why like her anchor is in the cave is because that's where the lantern is, not
Yeah.
because it's the red maid's like tomb or whatever. And it's like, ah, man, like because you're just assuming like, oh, it's because that's where she like is laid to rest, and that's where like the water from the river comes in. And obviously at the end of the book we know that like Ilsa, the red maid, she's actually like
Yeah.
crying into the, so it just, I was like, ah, that's so freaking good.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure, because I remember when, so like there are certain things that when it happens in the book, I go, oh, that's going to be significant later. And I remember the first time I read it when she says, we left the lantern behind. You don't need to know that you left something behind typically, unless it is going to have an effect at some point on the plot.
Yeah.
I remember being like, this is
I think
going
it
to
was
be
thrown in as a
important.
joke. Like I
Yeah.
think she kind of like threw it as an aside, being like, "Oh, great, Jakob's gonna be pissed because we left his lantern," and then just
Yep.
kind of like kept going. You don't even think about it as being like that was actually a significant line, because a
Yeah, no,
lot of people, yeah.
I remember clocking that as significant, but it's funny. It's very funny to me that like you see those things and you don't think anything of them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When you
Yeah.
sit there and go, huh, that's a weird detail to mention, 9 times out of 10, that means it's going to be an important detail at some point in the plot. Like maybe it means that, like, having left the lantern behind, they go to a place where they need light and they don't have access to light because they left that lantern behind. So it makes things harder. Or it could, be the object that your mother's undead ghost is attached to that you need to be able to actually imprison her. That's
Mm-hmm.
also possible.
Yeah, or even the whole interaction with Fortune and Death in Little Thieves,
Yeah.
when they meet them, in the woods, and Death says only one of you is going to make it home.
Jesus Christ. That Margaret Owen is a menace for that. The fact that like we come back to the inn and she's like, they were right. Only one of us made it home. Death
Yeah,
always knows.
it
Death
just took
always
Bonnie a little
knows.
bit longer. Yeah. It was just, yeah, I loved it. It was so good. Oh gosh. Oh, even the callback to her licking Everett's hand. Ah! Yes, like, because that's such an iconic moment in Little Thieves too,
Mm-hmm.
which is super fun, and
I
it having a bit more sinister connections, and that was the
Yes.
illusion of she must be a low god because she can control us and do things to us, and it's like, no, she literally has like a blood connection.
There are so many things in this novel that it's very clear that even if she only planned on Little Thieves being a standalone, she
Mm-hmm.
was laying the groundwork for the next book. Now, whether
Mm-hmm.
that's what this is one of those, I think it's one of those instances, but it could also have been a very much like, okay, so we're doing blood ties. Wait a minute. Wait a
Mm-hmm.
minute. She licked his hand. There was blood. I can use this, right?
Yeah, or even, what's really funny too is it's also believable that Vanya wouldn't fully believe that this is her family initially,
Mm-hmm.
because one, there was this sneaky moment where she doesn't remember who her godparents are, that
Yeah.
Death and Fortune. And I think that's really fascinating because obviously we know, because we were in book one with her, we know who her godparents are, her godmothers are. And then because we're in Vanya's head, we see her forget this. And we as a character know more than we as a reader know more than the main character. And that is really well done. It's
That's
so cool.
part of why I was so confused the first time that I read this, because I was like, why is she not calling on her godmothers? What's going on here?
Yeah.
Like it was like there's a on a writing level for the, like, I don't know how she was able to create for me as a reader the exact same experience kind of that Fanya is going through, in which something feels just a little off. I'm reading this going, okay, this is weird. This doesn't line up with what we were talking about in the last book. Why has she not met up with Emmerich? Why is this not? And you find out later that it was partly because this ghost that is her mom is manipulating things.
Yeah. And also, so like that was going on for why she wouldn't make the connection, because she's like, my mother didn't walk all the way to this to this place to drop me off, because it was like miles and miles away. And so she's like, how would that have happened? So that's why she immediately was like, these can't be my siblings. And then also though, if she had in mind a certain number of brothers and sisters, that doesn't match the way it is, because we end up having this discovery that the monk, her brother, what's his name?
Henrik.
Is it Henrik? We end up learning that she's included a trans character in here, which is wonderful. And it's so subtle, and it also shows, like, I always think this, that anyone who argues that like fantasy or any type of like, or like historical fiction books and settings where you would be like, oh, this can't, like society wouldn't allow this, or fantasy wouldn't allow this, you can include, more and more diversity as you go. And that was really lovely, because, and Henrik was so excited to see her, and oh gosh.
Also, I think like it's really nice how Margaret Owen is like just casually, that too, exactly. Just casually includes queerness in her novels. I love that. We love that. It's also if I recall correctly, Helga tells her that there are 7 brothers, but does not tell her the number of sisters.
Right?
Like,
because she only assumed that Helga had 7 brothers. She
had 7 brothers. I think she knew Helga had 2 other sisters. Like, she's thinking 7 brothers, 3 sisters. She's not having the full math. If I remember correctly.
That's a good point. Yeah. And also, I want to circle back to something you said, how there are so many elements that, we get in Little Thieves we don't know will become important in Painted Devils, or at least nodding to what's going to happen in Painted Devils. And I think we're getting that in Painted Devils for Holy Terrors as well, at least and what we've gotten so far, I know, is what I remember. I didn't really consider this until the reread, was the reason why so many of Vanya's memories and a lot of her thoughts regarding the justice system were surrounding Irmgard. Because many times we have this nod back, we get far more details about how horrific Irmgard actually was, how Irmgard was among the characters that really impacted Vanya's worldview, and how she is, never going to be deserving, and all of these things, like why she has this like view of herself. And then we also get many mentions of Irmgard's situation from book 1, and why, like, arguably the justice system was far kinder to Irmgard than she probably deserved because of the way the situation is. And then in the end, with the epilogue, she takes her ribbon. Oh my God. And I'm like, Irmgard's obviously going to be like, we're thinking about like the 2 major, oh my gosh.
Well, if you think about it, the villains of each book have been someone who, or the part of the thing that she overcomes in each book, it's been escalating, because the first book we deal with Giselle. That has a much more positive outcome than in Painted Devils, where the thing that we deal with is her mother. And so like the big boss that we have is Irmgard, because Irmgard is so crucial to her thinking of herself. Like, not like also the Baroness von Fallberg is also crucial to her thinking of herself. But like Irmgard would have come in and dealt such a crucial reinforcement of the things that Fanya's mother taught her at such a crucial age. Like there was
she reaffirmed it, like something that she
There
already was.
was a world where that didn't happen. There was a world where Fanya had people who were able to tell her that what her mom said was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There is a world where Janisa has more of an impact than Irmgard does.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Janisa is the reason that we have a Fanya that is able to say, this is what I know, what I deserve, and how I am treated is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But she still connects it to an internal like lack. Without Irmgard, that may not have been a thing that happened, but Irmgard is so crucial for why she believes the things that she believes of herself. So
yeah. And because not just for book 1, Giselle, but also with her godmothers, Death and Fortune.
Yes.
So those were, and then of course her mother. And it is interesting how the bigger the evil in her life, or at least the more impactful, the more time is dedicated. Like her mother gets an entire book. Irmgard is going to get an entire book, I think, with Holy Terrors. So we are kind of working our way up to, those who are far more sinister and need to be, taken care of. What's fascinating is that, whether we're considering gender for these low gods or not, but they are depicted, as women. They're all women that she's facing. Like you said, Giselle isn't this big baddie evil, but she was a fellow, woman or fellow young girl who was trying to survive and chose to, at one point put her survival above Vanya's. And she's learned from that. And then we have her mother, and then we have, Irmgard. So that is kind of fascinating.
It's interesting if you think about Little Thieves. The two things that she is really reckoning with in Little Thieves is her relationship with Giselle and her relationship with her mothers.
Mm-hmm.
And then we are going to be seeing her they mirror the fact that we are then going to be in conflict with her relationship with her actual mother.
Mm-hmm.
And now her relationship with Irmgard. And I actually think, so I don't know that Irmgard is going to, I'm not sure yet if Irmgard is going to be the big bad in the same way, because I haven't read what Holy Terrors is about. I'm going into it blind.
Mm-hmm.
I think we may have had hinted at in Painted Devils what the thing they're going to be tackling, or start, the small problem they're going to start tackling, because all of these books, they start out with a small problem we're tackling that ends up being a bigger issue, because they mentioned Prince Val Ludwig. I wouldn't be surprised if that is something that is happening in the next book.
Well, you know what? I was going to say what's interesting is the struggles or conflicts that Vanya has with a woman protagonist, or, that conflict is typically emotional. Whereas the, conflicts that she has with any leading man in the group is physical, as far as if we're thinking of, the first book with Little Thieves. What's his name? Adelbrecht. That was fully an action, more physical danger type of thing. Whereas with Giselle and with her godmothers, it was more of an emotional conflict. And then with, the Scarlet Maiden, aka her mother, that felt physical, but you didn't realize how psychological it was. And then we had the issue with the character who stole the goblet. That was more of a physical, tangible kind of conflict with him.
We had to get a heist in there.
You got to. There's a couple heists in Painted Devils actually too, because when we're thinking about Madame Treasury, so that is a woman with physical, but she also reminded her of Irmgard, reminded her of her mother and everything like that. So that's kind of interesting. I can't wait for us to start giving some I guess predictions. We definitely are going to take some time, friends, to do predictions about Holy Terrors. So this is probably also the time to let us know if you have anything else that you want to mention, that you want us to discuss. Because we'll keep talking, but I don't want us to miss anything that you guys are really.
If you think about it, throw it out there.
Irmgard is the instigator of Vanya's physical abuse, 100%, and her mental, emotional too. Giselle and Irmgard are opposites. Yes, because one's intentional harm, whereas Giselle, I don't think ever gave intentional harm either. So that's a good point.
It's one of those things that with Giselle's cruelty was a passive cruelty for the most part. It was her not doing anything.
Yeah, lack of action.
Being able to say, oh, I wasn't actually the one, I just didn't take any action. Irmgard's cruelty is intentional.
Mm.
Kendra, I caught that too. The random Backstreet Boys lyric.
Tennille and I mentioned it too as well earlier, where it was his poetry. You are my fire.
I know. Which is, I mean,
yes.
not that I would not expect Emmerich's poetry to be Backstreet Boys songs, but yes.
Ambrosia.
Oh, Lady Ambrosia. I loved Lady Ambrosia. I hope we get to see her in the next book.
Yeah, me too. She was hilarious and also just so thoughtful. I loved her perspective on things. And and you know what? That's another funny thing where as they were there, I can't remember what they were discussing. I think it possibly was the year of finding for him, where Emmerich was trying to talk about it with Vanya, and he was like, I'm going to talk to you. She's like, we can talk about it later. He's like, no, we need to talk about it now, because who knows, we may suddenly be interrupted by a doll, like a haunted doll that has a quest. And then we meet Ambrosia, and I was like, yes. I was like, Margaret's so funny. Oh god,
I know. I loved it.
The one other thing we haven't really focused on, which Abs kind of touched, was this discussion of like,
there we go.
Physical intimacy with Vanya, which was so funny and so sibling focused. But I also think that this was really well done with Vanya coming as Vanya and Emmerich both being characters who don't have any experience and trying to figure things out together, and also gaining, like, even if they feel uncomfortable, they did gain the assistance from adults a couple times in this book to kind of understand what was going on. And even with Ragna, they were discussing like what counts as like, and
that,
like, yeah,
that's a whole interesting discussion. The way that, and I mean, like, this is a whole thing through the book, but the way that what counts as sex is different based on what your definition is. It can change. I know we did not have as much Ragna as we needed. I think we'll probably get a lot more of Ragna in the final book. I feel like that's gotta be a thing.
Maybe but Giselle can come back as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like, it actually speaks to the fact too that not only are we discussing like two teens who don't have experience, and they're very fortunate to have willing adults and friends to discuss this with too. Not just adults, you can discuss it with your friends too, and
and not only that, but like who are safe to discuss it with, and like are very clear on boundaries. Like, I love the scene, even though we know that that's not what actually happened. I love the scene where Helga like is about to lose her shit on Emmerich because of the whole like him getting possessed and grabbing her thing.
Yeah, and you know what? And well, here, we'll read these comments and then we can kind of carry on the same discussion. But the talk of being ready and not just doing it to get it over with. Yes, because there are moments where it feels they're being forced to do this. And while it's like the Scarlet Maiden forcing this, that's a very relatable thought. Just in reality, feeling pressured, feeling as though you need to do it before you're ready. So I appreciate that as well. And we're also dealing with an additional layer of like Vanya having trauma from this, and having to deal with that, discuss her triggers, and being very fortunate. It's sad to say that she's fortunate, because reality, any partner should be willing to be patient and assist their other partner to deal with this. But Emmerich understands the trauma that she's coming from and is trying his best to keep open communication, wait until she's ready. And we even see this at the end of the book when he says, I've been ready, but that's not the requirement for this equation. Like, we both need to be ready. We both deserve to be ready. Yeah. So
yeah, I think it's so interesting how he is able to, because so here is the thing, is I think this is a situation that we normally would not see because they're so young. And so often when you're young, you do not have the tools to be able to navigate that, right? Like, that's an intentional choice on Margaret Owen's part to have him be someone who is thinking through things like that. And it also is one of those things where the fact that she doesn't have to tell him what happened to her is important, because I think in a lot of situations that are similar to this, people feel like it's a big revelation. They don't know how their partner is going to respond, all of that stuff. So asking for those things and being able to, so many times you see people that just like, they'll push through because like, I'm not like, I don't want to bother them with that yet. Like, I don't know them well enough to bear that to them yet. He goes into this knowing what happened and her knowing what his reaction to it is complete and utter support of her. Mm-hmm. So she never has to question that. And I love how you see that, and you see the way that he's like, he understands that she is not always able to verbalize when she is shutting down. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So. No, I completely agree. Helga telling Vanya not to be embarrassed about her lack of knowledge and how many parents try to keep their kids in the dark. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. That's historically accurate. That actually, there were a lot of societies where you were not given that information. Sometimes even after you were married, like because it was expected. You see this in Regency England, you see this in Victorian England, where it was kind of expected that your mother would have that conversation, but then that wasn't something ladies were supposed to talk about. So it was not as in-depth as it should have been. My favorite example of this is, I believe, from the Vikings, where apparently the Vikings, like the night before the wedding, you would sit down with all of the people of the same gender as you, and they would sit down and tell you how they had a good time together. They'd be like, listen, this is how you get it on. I'm like, this sounds hilarious and also so traumatizing for kids.
Yeah, where you're just like, okay.
I don't need to know that about my neighbors. But it is actually, I love that. I love the signal of him like being able to be like, hey, and like not making it a thing she has to verbalize.
Right, yeah. And Kendra mentions the bathtub scene too, which I think was like very important and validating for Vanya.
That scene.
Yeah.
Oh, that scene is like
do that.
Like catnip. Those are the kinds of scenes that I love.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's very taboo for a lot of people when it comes to discussing this kind of stuff. And it's just like, that's not the way we should do it.
I think we have a lot, at least in the global north, we have a lot more exposure to sex and the ideas of sex and a lot more access to those things than they have in the past. But definitely there are still, I mean, I grew out of a society that I was extremely lucky that the version of purity culture that I grew up in still believed in doing some basic education of what goes on. That said, there are certain things that I learned about. Like I did not learn about, I don't know if YouTube will, I'm gonna censor this because I don't know if YouTube will get mad at you, but I did not know that the O word was a thing until I was listening to a James Dobson thing on the radio, despite me knowing like how things work, because I knew how things worked pretty early because I found it in a book. I was very lucky that I grew up in a church and with a parent that believed in educating me about not necessarily the detail of like things going on with the body, but like of how things worked, of things like boundaries. My mom was, especially because she was in 2 abusive marriages before my dad, she was very big on certain boundaries, not as many as she should have been, but certain boundaries that I think helped me navigate a lot of stuff. There are churches that I know they do not talk to the girls about this stuff at all until right before the wedding night. My friends that got married, I knew more about what happened on the wedding night than my first friend that got married did when she got married. Because I remember like we had a conversation about that because she was like, yeah. And I sat down with my sister and I told her like, she told her a whole bunch of stuff. And she's like, I wish someone had told me that.
Yeah. I would have loved an earlier discussion of virginity as a social construct earlier, but I do like that they talk about how the Scarlet Maiden is an old god would think. Yes. So they do kind of discuss how it's like this idea is dictated of when
by society,
like, where you are in history, by society, it does change, it does evolve. So
and the kind of relationship that you have, because I feel like as Emmerich says, there are the kind of relation, like heterosexual relationships, there's a very clear line that you can kind of point to, a very clear ending that you can point to into what, when you there is a definitive line where you can know, we've crossed that line.
Yeah.
But that doesn't take into context the fact that like there are more things you can do than just what heterosexual couples do. Right.
And there's this big emphasis. A few different people discuss this with Vanya. It's like, it's up to you to decide, what this means, like what claiming means for you, because there isn't one definition. It's up to you. And I appreciate that as well. And Zoe, I will say I agree. It's just been very helpful to we're remembering a lot more. One thing that Tennille's asking is, has anyone read the short stories?
Not yet. I was waiting to finish this. I might.
Mm-hmm.
So here's my thing: is I'm not a big short story girly when it comes to things between books.
Sure.
And a lot of the time with these, I will wait until the published volume comes out, because I assume there is going to be a published volume of these stories.
Right. You did say that. Mm-hmm.
I assume that there's considering that I have finished the book and we have agreed on when we are going to start this,
Mm-hmm.
I may need something to tide me over.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I'm so excited to find out what I feel like the candlestick.
Hold on.
I feel like it's going to be one of those things that we're going to be like, this is so up. Okay, hold on. Now I need to compare. Hold on. Okay, so
I have this one, and I also have the above.
We have a crown and a horseshoe for little Thieves. We have a hand and the lantern.
Also, if you know what's really interesting is I'm realizing not only the blood, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 drops of blood.
Oh my god, that's amazing. Okay.
And the wreath on her head, like
are the
Scarlet Maiden, Ilsa had it at the end of the story.
I did not realize until this morning, this is not her mom. This is Ilsa.
Yeah,
it's Ilsa. But okay, so here is the thing. Can we put the Holy Terrors back up?
Oh, of course we can.
Because I have a point I want to make. Mm-hmm. So on here, the highest person on this is Icefall. The forest is the highest character. She's still kind of front and center, but that is the highest character is Icefall. Mm-hmm. On this one, the highest character is Ilsa of the River, right? Mm-hmm. On Holy Terrors, the highest point on the cover is Fanya.
Oh, but also, wait, I was thinking, my mind went Crown Bruna.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there are so many different ways, like, because we talked about.
But I agree that is a shift where we see her, she's gone from lower center to the side to being the main.
Yeah, moving up.
Yeah. Yes. I agree with that.
I mean, there are so many ways because of where this is. There are so many ways that what the crown could mean, because she is actively interacting with an empire.
Yeah,
right.
She's interacting with an empire, and I'm assuming the book's going to open with her with Bruna, because that's how the book ended, with her going off on the ride. So I don't know if that.
No idea.
Yeah, and also the way she's dressed,
we could know this.
Well, the way she's dressed, is she like kind of? Are we thinking Henrik? Are we thinking like with the abacus? When they had that the way they're dressed.
Tennille just pointed out. Look at what's in her hand.
I know she's holding the ribbon. I know. Listen, I already clocked that, and I was like, oh my gosh. So that's clearly.
I mean, I honestly do not know what this book is about. I have not looked at the synopsis of this book, so I cannot give you anything in regards to that.
Yeah, similarly to Vanya being tallest on the cover, I'm really hoping that Vanya goes full first person on the fairy tale prologues. Like, this is her story finally. Oh, that would be great. That would be really good.
I know. Too. And so an interesting thing, and I don't know if this is something that she's going to do, but it's an interesting thing that I noticed about both Little Thieves and Painted Devils is at the end, Fanya is the one that has to solve the problem. She is solving the problem. She's standing on her own, having to do the thing. Little
like she's working with a bunch of people in the lead up, but like the key moment is her having to make
figuring things out. Mm-hmm. Other people are cut out. We have the moment when she is before the godly courts, before she's able to say, can I bring in the guy that actually knows what's going on? We have the moment where she's standing in the river going, okay, I have to. Well, actually, no, it goes back even further than that. It's the moment when Emmerich has the Nachtmaren in his head, and she's having to go, I have to figure out how to solve this on my own. So she has to do the problems and solve so I'm very interested to see in Holy Terrors, are we going to have another moment where it comes down to, it is me, it is just me, I am the only one who can solve this problem? Or are we going to have her have this moment where she is standing there thinking that she is the only person to solve the problem, that she is utterly alone yet again, because that has been her entire thing, that she is utterly alone. She is the only person that can look out for herself. She's the only person that is thinking about her. Is she going to have a moment where she stands up? She's like, okay, I am on my own. I have to solve this problem on my own. And there is someone stepping up to solve the problem with her.
Yeah. And also, I think in one of her hands, is she holding a red penny? Is that what she's holding in her, or is it a jewel?
Let me, hold on. I have the cover right here.
Because that would be really lovely, full circle, because it brings us back to everything that's been in the lead up to her having, like, her being the red penny, you know?
Yeah, I think that is.
And I was going to say, it could be a ruby. Because that could connect us to book 2. Like, either way, it's a connection, and to book 1, because obviously.
Purely circular object. So okay, I'm guessing. So she's got the red penny in one hand and Emmerich's ribbon in the other. She's got the halo behind her. She's got the crown. I'm not sure what's going on.
With the 3 fates, where like the one's holding a string, the other one's holding, but it's like a knife. What is that?
It looks, like to me like a penknife, right? So it looks like someone has like a religious symbol, a holy symbol of some sort, and a penknife, which is used. Like, if it's a penknife, it would make sense because we have 2 very clerical robed figures, and penknives are used in the making of were used in the making of manuscripts, because they would scrape things. That's how you would erase things. You would scrape off because it's on animal skin. You're able to erase things in a way that you're not able to do on paper. So, like, if you made a mistake, you would just scrape that layer off. That's why some of the texts that you'll see, like especially the really old Middle Ages texts, they are so very fragile because they've had layers and layers scraped away, because people didn't necessarily, like, a lot of the texts that we have, they were not important texts at the time. And so people would they would strip the page and they would write over everything.
Okay, interesting. That's actually good to know. The Thieving Prince have a nickname.
Ludwig? I don't remember. Okay, you know what I'm going to do? You know what we're going to do? I think we just need to read the synopsis. Should we read the synopsis of this out loud?
Sure. Do it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, what's the synopsis? And, okay. Jesus. Okay. Holy shit. Margaret Owen is evil.
Why?
Margaret Owen is okay. It has been almost 2 years since she defeated the vengeful spirit of her mother, but Vanya Rose, no longer Schmidt, has finally made a name for herself. She is a goddaughter, a reformed thief, and now a folk hero. She stands up for those with nothing, bringing justice and prosperity where she can. That is an interesting time jump.
I was saying 2 years. Wow.
But members of the royal families are turning up dead, found with Vanya's calling card on the bodies. And as old flames, adversaries, and allies resurface, Vanya must face what it took to become the Finnegeist once and for all. It will take everything she is, not only to save herself and the people she loves, but time as we know it. See, here is a book where it makes sense to have a 19-year-old protagonist, because we're at the end of the series. But we start with her when she's 16. That makes sense.
She's aged. Also, that explains why she's holding the red penny.
That explains why she has holding the red penny. That explains some of the snippets that we've been seeing between the animosity between her and Emmerich, because I guarantee you she's still in contact with her family. Because they have demonstrated already that they will choose her over him every time. So if he tries to find her, they're going to hide her. I love that. I freaking love that.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, Irmgard must still want to be Empress.
My gosh. Yeah, I wasn't thrilled about the 2-year skip when I read it, but didn't want to spoil for anyone. Oh, totally understandable. I hate time skips. I get it, but now they have been apart longer than they were together. Yeah, that's true.
I'm not a big fan of that either, but I think the fact that it is so long makes sense, having read that synopsis, because when she meets Emmerich, she's on the back foot. They have never been in an equal standing in their relationship. So if we have a significant amount of time, number one, that means that, especially with her having made a name for herself, number one, that does mean that she is coming into that relationship with more. I was expecting a year to Neil.
This was what I was thinking as well. Yeah.
But she comes in Because it's 2 years since we last saw her, right? It's not 2 years since the beginning. Yeah, since she defeated almost 2 years. Mm-hmm. So that means that she's coming into this on much more equal footing to Emmerich.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right? And also almost 2 years kind of makes sense because so she like it probably took a few months for them to like settle the case and everything for him to become a full prefect, and then he's got to do his year. So it kind of, like they would have been apart anyway.
I'll be interested to see what part I'm interested to see if Kirkling plays any part or if she's just going to fade into the background.
Yeah, because she did so much damage. And actually, I'm so glad you brought up Kirkling again because
I know. I was like, we need to talk about this.
Well, first, what's interesting is we see another theme in this book. Also, sorry, there are sirens going by me if you hear it. There is, what was I going to say? There's a few themes or a few moments where the lesson at the end of the day is that it was an unachievable task because the person who set the task didn't want you to succeed. We had that with Ilsa when she was the Red Maid of the River, and she gave the task of trying to get Bruna's crown. She did it. She knew that it was never going to be successful. Like that was a goal that she did not want solved.
She wanted that.
And then with the Scarlet Maiden, aka her mom, she didn't she was always going to change the rules because she wanted it to be an unachievable task because that wasn't really what she wanted in the end. She just wanted Vanya to suffer. And then we have Kirkling, who had this goal saying, she would never allow Emmerich to get his finding, have it done, and get Vanya and have her be saved. Yeah. There's these three characters all set, these tasks knowing that there would never be any type of there wouldn't be a winner. There wouldn't be a successful completion of said task. And I think what's crazy is that we also had that kind of lead up. So then when we have this discovery about Kirkling doing that, it's like, we should have known because we've seen it throughout the entire book just by other characters. So another interesting
it's so interesting when you think about the fact that Kirkling, her professionalism meant she could not take out her feelings about Emmerich on Emmerich. So she took them out on Vanya because she knew that taking them out on Vanya would make Emmerich suffer.
Right. Yeah.
It's so interesting for her to be able to step back and realize it was never about me. It was always about Emmerich, and the fact that it was always about Hubert Clemens at the very end.
Yeah. And then I think that that's a kind of an interesting moment for there too, to react that Vanya's the main character, but she's not the main character of every story. She isn't the focus in this instance.
She's really nailed the everyman part. Right?
Yeah.
Because you so often you talk about wanting characters that how you make a story about a character that's in the background as things are happening. She's been in the background as things are happening. These situations are arising because of things going on in the Empire.
Yeah.
And she's just a normal person trying to make her way through it. And that's what gets her stuck in the middle of this stuff.
Yeah. But it was what an impactful thing. And I love how Vanya does end up kind of standing up to Kirkling saying, I know what you're doing. You're doing this to, attack Emmerich this entire time. Well, you know what? Let him think that I've just left him. Let him think this, because then you win. And it doesn't she's like, I'm not going to let you use me to ruin his career and everything.
I am so, yes, she was. And here's the thing is, I don't think she was aware of it. I think that she had these feelings and this frustration, and she was able to point at Vanya and be like, this is the clear reason why I'm angry and why I'm frustrated, because I don't like her. And when Vanya calls her out, it's like, oh, well, it's actually not me. It's not about me. Okay, so I am on the fence about whether or not Emmerich is going to be mad and think what Vanya wants him to think, that she just left him, or if he is going to be mad because it's clear in the snippets that he is mad, if he is mad because she did not give him the choice.
I think
for him.
I'll tell you what I want. I'll tell you what I want to happen. I believe that it's understandable that he would be frustrated and angry and upset, especially with having so much time for this, hurt to resonate. I think that if he has learned anything throughout, these 2 books of experiences, that he shouldn't be thinking the worst of Anya, saying,
Yeah.
we've had this. Because also that was the moment where they both like finally ended up, coming together physically as well. They were both ready, fully comfortable with each other.
They did it.
For his future. Yeah, they did it. They did it. And so like that would, if I were him, I'd be like, something else must have influenced this. There must have been a further thing. And wouldn't he then maybe speak to her family about this? Because she overheard Helga being angry and arguing with.
I think he has
Kirkland.
more context than she thinks.
Yeah. So I think he'll be more upset knowing that she didn't think that they could work through this together. And like together.
To be honest, I think she was right to some extent, because I think he would have, like, here's the thing is, she is looking at it from the bigger picture, and this is this is something that she has done that is truly selfless, because she could have Emmerich if she wanted.
Yeah.
There's the risk that if he lost his dream because of her, he would have resented her. But there was also, like, I think if he was given the choice, he would make the choice of her every time. Like he said, I would choose you every time. I was going somewhere with this, and now it's gone. Where did I start?
And that's why, I think that's why. Well, she didn't. Yeah, she prevented. She knew what his choice would be.
She was
and
thinking
she's like, I don't want him to choose me.
Yeah. Well, that not just that, she was thinking about the impact he would have on the prefects.
Yeah, because she's like, prefects need people like him.
There are other girls like me that need Emmerich to be able to do his job and to be this person. I think that is like I think he's going to think that she was scared, that she was maybe being selfish, things like that. I think it's one of the first truly, truly selfless things that she has done, or that one of the most truly selfless things that she has done. And like being like, you know what, I'll give this up. I can give this up. I can be okay with this. Oh, pulling out.
Well, it says it in, I was say, it's on page 490, the top of 490. This is exactly the scene, exactly the thoughts that you were saying. At the top of it, it just says, it might be Emmerich himself. I never wanted him to choose between me and being a prefect. Before this month, it was because I was afraid he'd take the dream he's hunted for 10 years. Now I'm afraid he will keep his promise and choose me. And there will be more girls like me, like Agneath, made to every day, because no one with the power to help them will listen. I can be selfish, cruel, deceitful, and trustworthy, but even I know what the right choice is, and I can't let him choose me. I don't know what I deserve, but that is too much to ask.
That's love there, guys. That's love, right? Like, yes, she should have, like, in my opinion, so here are a couple things. I do think that she is underestimating him in a way, because I think there is a part of her that, like, there's some mention of him resenting her. I think he is self-aware enough that if he was forced to choose and he chose her, he would know. He'd be like, no, it's the system I'm mad at. It's the people that made me choose. It's not her that he's mad at. But
I think there's a moment where she also says, I think there is a moment where she says, maybe we could overcome Kirkling together, but there will be someone else. Like, there will always be someone else trying to tear him down because of his affiliation with her. So it isn't just that she thinks that he and she couldn't actually overcome Kirkling. She's just assuming this is going to be a cycle, and that she will always, like, be the crux.
It's going to be interesting to see how she navigates that, because I feel like we've been seeing Emmerich slowly become more disillusioned with the prefects in this especially this last book, right?
Yeah.
But like, I think she also underestimated him in that if she said, I don't want to do this, I am making a choice, I do not, like, if she'd waited till the next morning, I know they're going to make you choose, I don't want to make you choose, I don't want to do this, I don't want to part. If she did that, he would respect it. Even if she's not necessarily giving him a choice in it, because that's her choice to make. She gets to decide, I do not want to be in a relationship with you because of the repercussions. So, like, I think that's part of why he's going to be mad, because she didn't have the guts to say it to his face. Because if she had said it to his face, he would have respected it, in my opinion. Do I think he would have told her she was wrong? Do I think maybe he would have tried to fight her on it? Yes, she did take the coward's way out. I will be honest. Like, I'll admit that she took the coward's way out and did deny him his agency in that. But also, she gets to decide.
We understand where she's coming from. We understand why she did what she did. Like, could there have been a better way to do it? Yes. Like she fully is in her right to say, no, I'm going to go off. I'm not going to let you do this, but like informing him. Like, I think that's the thing, is he wasn't allowed to be informed so that he could at least make his own, like maybe not make that decision for her, but make his own decisions moving forward. Like, they both are informed moving forward and knowing what they're doing. But obviously that'll be a conflict for us to view.
Yeah. If you're not on Margaret Owen's Instagram, you should go on her Instagram, because she's been posting quotes for the last couple of months. Just go and comment, I'm sending you my therapy bill, every time she posts one, because every time I read one, like, I know I honestly, I feel like these are probably all from the very beginning of the book. I think, again, we're going to see, well, it could go two ways. I think there's a possibility that we see this, like, the stuff between them get resolved again very quickly, and then they're having to focus on fighting things together. I think there's also a place where we see maybe them form a truce, but things do not get resolved between them.
Yeah, it's like a slow.
If she's gonna do the thing where Fanya gets surprised to find that someone is standing with her when she thinks she's going to be utterly alone, I have a feeling the latter is going to be the case. It's also going to be very funny watching them be very mad at each other and also very horny, because she's mentioned multiple times where she's like, the fact that we can't do anything because we haven't had time, driving me nuts. It's going to be so hilarious. I'm going to die. I'm going to physically
wait. Like, it's going to be so funny. It's going to be so thought-provoking. It's going to be, like, so detailed. Like, there's I have no worries. I know it's going to be great. I'm so excited.
Neil, I'm officially reading The Fallow Year. I'm going to go find it on AO3. I'm going to go read it. Like, the more we talk about this, the more I need to read it. I'm here for it. I'm also so, and I don't know how she's going to, but I'm so here for how she's going to navigate Emmerich being mad at her while also not wanting to do more harm.
Right.
It's going to be kind of like a situation where he's like, you've hurt me.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see, does he go like, I'm going to hurt you too? Because he has done that. He's been petty like that. Or is he going to go, I'm not going to be one more person?
Yeah. Or more so, like, it's more on Vanya's shoulders to correct this. Like, he is like, I'm hurt. I'm not going to yield from that. I'm also not going to hurt you further. But, you're the one who has to, like, move forward in, like, kind of correcting the damage that you caused, kind of thing.
I'll be honest, I think there's going to be a part of it, part of the conflict is going to be him going, why? Like, this, I want to be with you. And her being like, I do not want to be with you. I think she's going to be, once again, but for a good reason this time, instead of like trauma. I mean, obviously trauma reasons are going to be in there, but like, I think her main reason is going to be, I don't want to be with you because of these reasons. You cannot change my mind on that. And again, I think she's going to see that he is able to respect that decision. At least I hope he is. I think he's going to be like, it's the stupidest decision you've ever made. This is by far the silliest thing you've ever done, but still be able to respect it.
Yeah, well, we're going to see. And our next sprints are this coming weekend. For those of you who need to mark it in your calendars, this Friday night on the 4th, we're going to be having sprints on my channel. I don't fully know when time-wise yet. We'll unless we've solidified it, Margaret. I can't remember.
I feel like we may have talked about a time, but I do not know if we settled on it. I can check the messages really quickly.
Yeah. Well, and as you check, if anything, it's probably going to be what, like 4, 5, 6 p.m. I
mean, it's based on your work schedule, so like, or your schedule.
Well, I'm free all evening. Oh, I'll double check. Actually, let me double check.
We'll let people know when the sprints are.
Yeah, well, either way, we'll do Friday evening, and then we'll do Saturday as well on your channel. I think we said evening as well, or afternoon.
Okay, we can do that.
We can do afternoon as well. It's fine by me.
We'll see. We'll go reread the messages, guys, and figure out if we already decided on a time.
Yeah, just know Friday, Saturday, the 4th and the 5th of April is when we're going to be starting Holy Terrors. Obviously, for a lot of you, you may not have access to the book right away. You're still, feel free to join us. We won't be giving like major spoilers, and it's also the beginning of the book anyway. On top of that, what we can do is potentially in like, later in April, closer to our discussion. If we feel the need to, we can always do like other extra sprints so that
Yeah.
more of us can kind of like come together and enjoy it, because it's touchy when a lot of
It's
us rely on the library.
Yep, yep. And also the fact that like we all read at different paces
Yeah.
and all of that.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah, but thanks everyone for like joining us in this discussion. We do appreciate you because we had so much fun. And obviously for us too, it was a reread. So it's really lovely to see a lot of you read this for the first time. And,
I'm
we
not
just,
ready.
I know.
The fact that I agree. I suggested reading this book live.
Oh boy.
I'm
We're
you
gonna
know
have
what?
a ride.
I'm going to keep my camera on and try and read in front of so you guys can see me suffer.
Oh my gosh. Or like kick your feet and I'm excited. I think it's going to be at least I think the very beginning is going to be really fun because every single one kind of starts off with like a scam
Really good
heist action. Then
It's
we're
just
going to settle in and be like, oh God, what are we in for?
It just depends on how quickly we get into the moments that people could be getting in trouble or suffering secondhand. I'm suffering secondhand embarrassment. Yeah, this book. It's so funny that this is one of my favorite books because it does so much to like trigger the child that was always afraid of getting in trouble.
Yeah, just it's so good, honestly. And all of you know now you'll have to reread it because you'll catch other things. So yeah. But on that note, we will see everybody next weekend. Thanks for being here. Bye.
Bye.